Welcome to Retire with Purpose, a show specifically designed to help you maximize your financial confidence in retirement. Casey Weed is the CEO and Chief Visionary of Howard Bailey Financial, a certified financial planner and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. He's your host on Retire with Purpose.
Hey, I'm Casey Weed, and we believe in retirement strategies that are driven by meaning and purpose. Join us this week and every week as we discuss planning for your best retirement, pinpointing your purpose, building a rock-solid financial plan, and unpacking trending topics that could impact your financial future. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey, and I am joined by my good friend, Marshall Johnson, here with me. And we are here to discuss retirement with you. So if you're at retirement, in retirement, near retirement, or you're just seeking that coveted job optional status, you have found yourself a home. We're going to have a wide-ranging conversation about finance today, talking about everything from CDs as part of your investment strategy, estimating what your tax rate will be in retirement. We'll talk a little bit about whole life insurance. We've got a question from Kevin in Defiance on that, and you're not going to want to miss it. We have the Managing Director of Behavioral Finance and Investing at Betterment, the third largest robo-advisor in the world, Dan Egan, will be joining us here in just a little bit. But first, off the top, we're going to be covering an article that was part of our weekend reading for retirees email series. It went out this past Friday. Every single Friday, I send out one email from my box to your inbox, which covers 4 different articles on trending topics in the retirement planning space, everything from tax planning to investment planning, the latest in income planning strategies, and so much more. If you would like to get a link to this article, you can go to retirewithpurpose.com, click on the podcast tab, as we did a full-length podcast discussion on this article as well. You can get the link there, and don't forget to sign up for weekend reading. Again, retirewithpurpose.com. First name and email will get you rolling. This week, we're spotlighting an article from Money Talk News, 6 surprising benefits of not retiring when your spouse does.
Oh, I like the title there. 6 surprising benefits of not retiring when your spouse does. And I think, Casey, we hear from a lot of families that go, well, we're gonna do this, or we're gonna retire. You know, a lot of people think that they kind of have to do this in lockstep. And I think sometimes one spouse goes, well, I'm not going to let him retire. I'm going to retire with him.
Yeah. You see a little bit of a tinge of jealousy in there at times. And maybe in order to overcome that jealousy, you may already be aware of some of the benefits when it comes to continuing to work and having one spouse retire. But there may be some surprises in there as well, things that you haven't thought of yet. And that's what I loved about this article. It shared some benefits that maybe you haven't thought of, and reasons I think it really does make sense in general not to retire at the same exact time. Now, maybe you both don't want to retire on January 1st of 2022. Maybe one should retire January 1st and one should retire in August of that year. Maybe it should be a couple years later. It is unique for every single couple what those benefits are going to be, but this article gave you some ammo and things to think about. And off the top, it shared, I think, one of the most common benefits, just having more time to save. And not just more time to save in retirement or pre-retirement because you have someone that's continuing to work and save, but if you have one spouse that continues to work and the other one continues to work, which one is getting the match, first of all? And that's the one you want to continue to work. You want the other one to retire, right? The other one that's not getting the match is probably the one that you want to step away from employment, and they can still continue to contribute. That's one of the most overlooked elements of saving in tax-advantaged retirement accounts. I can't count on my hands how many different times I've had couples coming in where one's working, one's not working, and they're not making retirement contributions for both of them. But you can. The non-working spouse can utilize the income from the working spouse to make contributions to their Roth IRA, their traditional IRA, et cetera.
Yeah, because you have to have earned income in order to contribute to a lot of those retirement accounts. And so non-working spouses can still do a Roth. They can still do an IRA and take advantage of the earned income from the other spouse.
And arguably, the biggest benefit of all will be those compounding Social Security checks.
Yeah,
right?
There you go. So bigger Social Security checks is the second thing they touch on here, delaying that benefit and getting that increase. Well, if one spouse is still working, they can allow their benefit to continue to roll up and wait to defer that. And that also helps with the surviving spouse. So down the line, maybe 20, 30 years down the road, that individual passes away. Well, their larger benefit then carries forward.
Well, and I was actually working with a couple where we weren't sure who should retire. So we wanted to analyze who should retire first, who was going to continue to work, and we wanted to focus on their Social Security benefits as one of the core elements of this decision-making process.
Sure.
And what we found out after checking out their earnings record, which you can check out at ssa.gov, is one of the two spouses, he, in this case, did not have all 35 years of work history.
Ooh.
So she already did. She had worked 35 years.
She's like, I'm out.
Her 35-year average was full. Now, he didn't want to get a zero, and that's what happens if he went ahead and retired. He would get a zero in his average, so it made sense for him to continue to work just to make sure he didn't have any zeros in that 35-year average that they use to calculate what your Social Security payments will be. And that had a pretty big impact on their bottom line in retirement. Not only are they delaying Social Security longer, but they're increasing the Social Security benefit itself quite a bit.
Right. And so you made a good point there. Log into the Social Security Administration's website, check that out for yourself. Make sure you look at that work history and see if there's any errors. Make sure there's no zeros in there where there shouldn't be a zero. It's not too often they make a mistake, but we have run into individuals that have been able to correct that. Next up, they talk about lower healthcare cost. Well, that makes sense. If somebody's still working, you may not have to both buy insurance on the exchange. One of you gets to keep the employer.
I see this as one of the most common, if not the most common reason that spouses continue to work. Sure. And sometimes it's just silly. I've got a couple that they were both going to retire. They both retired, and then they got this health insurance shock. They went out, they started shopping for health insurance and go, oh my gosh, we don't want to pay this. This is outrageous. So one of the spouses went to work just for the health insurance coverage. That's the only reason that she wants to be there is the health insurance coverage. This is a couple whose retirement income is over $20,000 a month. They can afford to pay for their own health insurance coverage.
Isn't that
However,
amazing, though?
it's a really, if you've never had to do it before, if you've never had to pay your own health insurance or actually seen it, directly come out of your account rather than just coming out of your paycheck, you see it come out of your checking account, it feels a little different. You go, oh, this just seems irresponsible, and you go back to work. You've got to ask yourself, is that really a good reason to continue to work? You don't need the money. You can spend it on those things, and that's one of the luxuries of having financial independence is paying for things that other people can't afford to pay for to buy yourself more freedom. And that might mean you have to pay several $100s in order to get that health insurance coverage for yourself, but you're able to save yourself 30, 40 hours a week every week and do the things you really love doing every day.
Yeah, it's something that we see time and time again, people that just will not write that check for the health insurance. They're going to keep working till they're 65. But as you mentioned, Casey, determining what that purpose is for retirement and letting go and understanding that, hey, we can afford this, we can pay for this if it's truly important to them to retire.
Number 4 is a lower tax burden, right? If you have one of the two of you that's no longer working, you're going to have a lower income, a lower gross income, and that might put you into a lower tax bracket. Now, when I look at this, I go, well, that doesn't seem like a good argument to, just have one spouse. It's kind of like, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a big truck before the end of the year just so I get a tax deduction. I'm going to spend $1 so I can save 30 cents. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense. However, one of the big benefits of having that lower tax burden that I've seen with couples we've worked with is being able to do Roth conversions before they retire. In much larger Roth conversions to take advantage of the lower tax bracket that they're in, maybe even a lower one than they're going to be in when they get into retirement. And
we just did this yesterday for a family where she retired, but she was making about $50,000, and so they know that now they're going to recreate her income, but they're going to do it in the way of Roth conversions to be kind of right back where they were and start to prepare and have a proactive tax strategy.
Well, and honestly, usually one of the two spouses doesn't really want to retire, right? There's somebody that might want to continue to work.
Usually it's not two spouses going, well, which one of us should retire? It's usually one knows that they're going.
Well, and then that one quite often wants the other one to retire with them so that they have more time together.
That's true.
But you have to realize that might not be a good thing either. In the last couple points here, they talk about an easier, a smoother transition into retirement, a better relationship. One of the overlooked facts of retirement is something called marriage compression happens. Throughout your working life, you've had work, right? You've had other things that consumed a large portion of your time, if not the majority of your time. And when you step into retirement, all of a sudden you may be spending more time together on a daily basis than you ever have throughout your entire lives.
Yeah. Who was the guy who was on your podcast? The Honey, I'm Home. Was that Dr.
Delamontagny?
Yeah, I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, Robert Delamontagny.
Yeah, that's a great book. I mean, relationship after relationship expert talks about some of these challenges with people just being together full time, and they haven't been for years and years and years. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and if you're trying to jumpstart this engine and you're just trying to figure out where do I even begin, maybe you're trying to get a spouse on the same page as yourself, you don't want to overlook anything. We talk about all of these different elements of retirement, when one spouse should retire, when one spouse should continue to work, especially when it comes to how to maximize your Social Security benefits and putting together Roth conversion strategies. I cover all of this in my Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Job Optional, and we want to give it to you at absolutely no cost. All you have to do is give us a call right now, 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559, and we'll send you out a free copy of my best-selling book, Job Optional. Next up, we are going to be answering questions from you. But before we get there, I want to tee up our question of the day. According to Yahoo Finance, what U.S. state is the least tax-friendly for retirees? Is that Kansas, Ohio, California, Nebraska? The answer when we return.
First-time callers are eligible to receive one in-stock book per request. Limit one book per week per household up to 3 books per calendar year. See full terms at howardbailey.com/terms. You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed, and joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, to answer our question of the day. According to Yahoo Finance, what U.S. state is the least tax-friendly state for retirees? Is that Kansas, Ohio, California, Nebraska, Indiana? Well, Marshall, the answer?
I would have thought for sure this was going to be California, but it's actually Nebraska, the Cornhusker state.
Oh, man, Nebraska. I mean, it's not like anybody wants to go there anyways.
Yeah, get me out of here.
But they tax your retirement benefits. State income tax is almost 7%.
Woo, buddy.
And so they go, well, it's 2.5% to 6.5%. Yeah, but the highest rate applies to incomes over $31,750. So then you've got property tax at 1.65%. State and local sales tax, that's a big one, 6.39%. What are you going to do in retirement? Are you going to stop spending money? No, you're going to continue to spend, and that tax is going to hit you year after year.
How about the inheritance tax down there? Ranges anywhere from 1 to 18%.
Man,
jeez.
I don't want to die in a state that's going to tax me again when I die. The federal government's already going to try to do it.
Anything over $10K.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Don't a good reason for trust work.
Don't die in Nebraska.
And you might be surprised at what the best state is, or the most tax-friendly state for retirees. It's different depending on whether you're working or retired.
Or have pension income.
The most tax-friendly state for retirees, according to Kiplinger, was recently ranked as Delaware.
Oh, wow.
State income tax is still a thing, 2.2 up to 6.6, but 6.6 is incomes over $60,000 rather than the $30,000 here. But you're also able, as an individual over age 60, you can exclude up to $12,500 of pension and other retirement income. Your Social Security benefits are also exempt, and there's 0% sales tax. So if you're going to spend money in retirement, you don't have to worry about what Nebraska at 6.5% here. And
deal.
You have very reasonable property tax rates, and there isn't an estate tax like you have here in Nebraska. So there's a lot more to consider other than just the state's income tax rate. There's a lot of other things to consider as you step into retirement. Capital gains is another one of those things you should consider. Most often I think we go, I'd go to Florida or
that's what I was
Texas.
going to say, Florida or Texas.
But they're making up for it somewhere else. These states are not going broke.
Absolutely. That's a great article and leads us into our favorite segment, right?
Yeah,
Cues
fan
from
questions. Yeah, so we've got some questions that come to us throughout the week. If you've got questions, we're happy to deliver you an answer. Absolutely no cost. We have fun doing it. Here at Howard Bailey, our brand DNA says we know we can't work with everyone, but we can help everyone. If you want a little bit of help, but you're not ready for a full-on financial advisor, you just have some questions you want answered, go to retirewithpurpose.com. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, it says Ask Casey a Question. Type your question in there. We'll get you an answer. And if you'd like, we'll feature your question right here on the show. We did that with Glenn in New Haven, Indiana. He says, what are the pros and cons of utilizing CDs as part of my investment strategy? How can I determine which type of CD will get me the highest return?
Well, that won't be a very fun game these days, Glenn. We like to call those certificates of disappointment these days.
Or certificates of depreciation.
Yeah, there you go. Safely underperforming inflation.
Safely losing money.
Safely losing money. But all kidding aside, pros and cons. I mean, CDs have been kind of at the foundation of income planning for years. I mean, my grandmother used to work at Fort Wayne National Bank and would tell me, retirement income strategies used to be just laddering out CDs. The farmers would sell their crop, they'd ladder out CDs. Every year one would come due, and that was their income strategy. But today we've got a war on savers these days, and so the banks are pretty upset that they have to write mortgages at less than 3% interest, so they're going to take it out on the savers and not give you a whole heck of a lot on CDs. Boy, you could go out 5 years before you got anything that resembled what we should be able to get normally with a 12-month CD.
It is crazy. One of the places, if you're shopping around, I like Bankrate.com. I actually use Bankrate.com for a number of different things. And right now, if you're looking for 5-year CDs, I mean, the best 5-year CD rates right now, 1%, 1.35%. I mean, it's next to nothing right now. And this is, why it can make sense to utilize an insurance product over going to the bank. You can get 2.5%, over 3% for a 5-year fixed rate with an insurance company versus going to the bank. The biggest benefit you have with the bank is you have FDIC coverage, and you probably have a little bit more liquidity in the way of lower penalties with CDs. So your penalty might be 6 months of interest with a CD. There are some out there that'll penalize you on your principal, but most are going to be 6 months of interest. There are some out there that have even lower penalties and higher free withdrawal rates. But in general, I will say CDs are a little bit more liquid than you're going to find with a fixed annuity, and they have FDIC coverage versus utilizing an insurance company that's backed by their claims paying ability. But with a CD, you have a lower return, and you have to pay taxes on your interest every single year. With an annuity, you can get a much higher rate of return. You can still take out typically up to 10% of your account value every year without a penalty, and then your gains are going to be tax deferred, so you don't have to pay taxes on that 3% every year. That money's yours, and it won't impact your other sources of income. So I'd encourage you to shop around, keep an open mind, and think about alternatives to CDs. We have to think about this differently than your parents or grandparents did, and so I'd strongly encourage you to just keep your eyes in the windshield and not in the rearview mirror. There's a reason why the windshield's so much bigger than that rearview mirror. Our next question comes from Janet in Granger, and Janet says, how can I estimate what my tax rate will be in retirement, especially when it comes to capital gains tax?
Oh, boy. She's Janet, geez, you got a great question. I mean, capital gains rates are at the center of our political universe right now when talking about a new administration and some of the potential changes that can be made or they expect to be made. I think you can prepare for higher capital gains rates in the future, but it certainly does depend on your household income. There's great websites out there that have detailed where capital gains rates have been in the past. I think Democrats, Biden in particular, wants to go after long-term capital gains rates and possibly move them back to ordinary income. Well, if you're a retiree like a lot of our families and your income's less than $100,000 a year, that's not a big deal, and it may not impact you all that much, but I would encourage you to have a deeper discussion about taxes, Casey, and how it relates to income strategies for retirees, but also preparing for required minimum distributions. Typically, the individuals that we meet with that are in difficult tax situations are widows that may be in their 80s that are stuck with high RMDs and things that could have been prepared for earlier in retirement.
Well, when it comes to capital gains taxes, those rates today are between 0 and 20%, and then an additional 3.8% for Medicare surtax if your capital gains are high enough, your income's high enough. And that's where we sit today. I don't know what it's going to be in the future. As Marshall said, those capital gains rates may go away. It doesn't look like that. I mean, that's not exactly what's on the docket right now. It's going to be for incredibly high incomes and incredibly higher amounts of capital gains before you see those things being converted back to ordinary income tax rates. I think one of the best things that you can do, though, is truly understand your effective tax rate and understanding that taxes are marginal. Our tax rate system is marginal. There's brackets. So just because you find yourself in the 22% bracket doesn't mean your effective tax rate is actually 22%. What I like to do, though, in a lot of the scenarios that I put together in order to stress test the portfolio for potentially higher tax rates in the future is instead of using that effective tax rate, I'll use your marginal tax rate. And that would assume that taxes will go up by about 50% typically as you step into retirement in the future. So that's assuming substantially more income taxes for you in the future if you use your marginal tax rate. That's a good way to stress test it. The best thing you can possibly do, though, is just eliminate the taxes you'll pay in retirement. So try to do as much as you can today to eliminate that variable in retirement. That means moving those dollars from those tax-deferred accounts to tax-free accounts. And if you want an analysis on how to accomplish that, Janet, all you have to do is give us a call right now, 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll run a tax analysis for you at absolutely no cost, and we will stress test that retirement strategy for future tax rate increases.
Next up, we've got Kevin in Defiance, Ohio. Kevo says, my mother is a healthy 61-year-old and I'm 35. I'm thinking about taking out whole life insurance on my mother as a retirement strategy. As she is healthy, she qualifies for the best possible rates for her age. Is this a wise retirement strategy, or am I better off putting the money into a long-term Vanguard fund?
Well, the answer, as unfortunately always is with things like this, is it does depend.
Depends.
It's impossible to give you a good, clear answer on this. I'm going to talk about it from a very high level. I own life insurance on both of my parents as an investment tool and as a risk management tool. And I think it's a great tool for those individuals that have already maxed out their retirement contributions. So
it's not step 1 or 2 or 3 or 4.
You maxed out your HSA, maxed out the 529, maxed out the 401k, and where else can I put money that can grow on a tax advantage basis? Either you're buying life insurance on a parent and the investment will be the death benefit back to you, or you're buying life insurance on yourself and the investment return will come in the way of tax-free income from the cash value in the future. So you have to figure out what that goal is and figure out if it makes the most sense for you. Long term, the Vanguard, low cost total market fund is, basically the S&P 500 fund is going to outperform the life insurance in all likelihood. Say over a 20, 30-year time frame, you'll probably do better with the Vanguard fund. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't diversify. So we're saying diversify. This isn't your first stop. Have a lot of different eggs in a lot of different baskets. That's what makes a good retirement strategy. And that's why we offer a complimentary financial review right here on the show. We're here to allow you to meet with an independent financial advisor on our team, either in person or through a video meeting from the comfort of your home. And we'll help you answer questions like this. We'll help you determine how prepared you are to handle retirement pitfalls like inflation, healthcare emergencies, stock market crashes, rising taxes like Janet's concerned about. In short, we'll take the guesswork out of financial planning for you, and it can take just 30 minutes. So for the next 10 callers that call right now, 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review at no obligation. That's 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. Next up, I am excited to introduce you to Dan Egan, who is the behavioral finance expert, head of investments over at Betterment, one of the largest robo-advisory firms in the world.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, and another very special guest. We have behavioral finance expert Dan Egan, who is also the managing director of behavioral finance and investing at Betterment, which is the third largest robo-advisory firm in the country.
I can't believe that. They're not the largest?
I mean, arguably they are, but you have to put Schwab and Vanguard ahead of them by quite a bit.
Right.
However, Betterment is they are exclusively a robo-advisory firm versus a Vanguard or Schwab. Yeah. So in fairness, you could say they are the largest robo-advisory firm in the world. They are a firm that provides robo-advising, cash management services. And in his role, Dan integrates behavioral finance and passive investment strategies to help customers achieve their financial goals, utilizing intelligent interfaces that he helps design to make good investment behavior automatic, or as automatic as possible, and bad investment behavior as difficult as possible. We're still going to make mistakes. It's impossible to eliminate, but he's done a pretty good job of designing a really remarkable system over there at Betterment. And one of the things that we had to kick off our conversation with was something that we talked about in our pre-interview together here with Dan, and that was about us being competitors. You might be surprised that we're having one of the largest robo-advisory firms featured on the Retire with Purpose podcast. And again, you can check out this episode. It's episode number 207, retirewithpurpose.com. And so we wanted to talk about why we aren't competitors. And I'll let you hear it in Dan's words, why a robo-advisor like Betterment isn't a competitor of an independent financial planning firm like ourselves.
Generally speaking, our clients are, I don't know how to put it, they are reasonably savvy that they know what they want. They kind of have an idea I want a balanced portfolio. I want it rebalanced. I want a little bit of tax stuff. Those are very different people than the people who are like, hey, I've got $2 million and I'm about to retire and pull the trigger. This is scary. What exactly is going on here? What do I need to think through? What are all of the different components of this? So I often think about it Betterment has designed some kind of what's it called? Like a sedan, right? It's a good car. It's like what you would recommend to the vast majority of people. Maybe a hatchback, so you get some trunk space in there, is really useful. But the people who are looking for either a high-end sports car or a Jeep or an off-roader. They have different needs, and sedans don't really compete with Jeeps or with high-end sports cars. That's just a different market. They're both cars. They both get you where you're going, but they're serving fundamentally different populations because of the specific needs that they have for what they're using.
I like that. Sedans, Jeeps.
Yeah, I love the analogy. And you know, I refer people to Betterment. I'm basically advertising for Betterment here.
Sure.
And because I think it's a great company and it's a good fit for the right person. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we have couples that'll come in and say, hey, can you meet with our kids? You know, they're just getting started. They want to get started saving, and you know, they're just not sure what to do. I'll say, yeah, come on in. You know, I'll have them meet and we'll get together. And I never plan on working with them because it just wouldn't make sense. You know, on your way to retirement, it's all about accumulation. And that means it's all about growth. It's all about getting the biggest return you possibly can. And you're not going to get the biggest return you possibly can by paying fees. When you pay a fee, that is the biggest determinant of long-term performance. The lower the fees, the bigger the returns historically. And so for that young individual that's just trying to get started saving, they need to go somewhere where it's automatic. They can automatically start saving. They can keep their costs very low. And then someday they'll be like their parents, and they'll be at a point where they go, you know what? I've done pretty well. I've won the game, and I've had great returns. Now I just want to make sure I keep it. And now they're facing different liabilities, different risks than they had when they were young, they were broke, and they were saving a couple $100s a month. Now as they step into retirement, they're thinking about things like taxes. They're thinking about things like estate planning. They're thinking about things such as, hey, if I have a market crash, yeah, that was fine when I lost 30% because I had the time to make it up. I don't have that time anymore. Now I need a strategy for that worst case scenario, healthcare, etc. Yeah, that's when you pay an advisor. You pay an advisor to protect you against the major risks and liabilities you might face in retirement and see the big picture. And not everyone needs that. You know, sometimes we just need the hatchback. I mean, when you're just starting out, you're probably not driving a BMW, but when you get into retirement, maybe you're driving a BMW. Life changes over time. There's a place for robo-advisors. There's a place for fee-based firms like ourselves.
Yeah, and he kind of goes into that here in this next segment, talking about risk management and liability protection.
Yeah, this is what he said, you know, is one of those biggest benefits of working with a face-to-face financial planner.
This is one of the cases where I think a financial advisor earns their weight probably in the first, 90 days, whatever it is, to say, listen, I'm going to push you that we have to think about what we're going to use this money for and what it's for in the future. Do you want to retire? What kind of retirement do you want? Do you want to be able to pay for your kid's wedding? That's an important thing. We have to sort of budget out and think about values and priorities and how this money is segmented. It's hard for us to push clients to really get them to do that struggle work because we're an app. People want sort of an easy, seamless experience on the app. And I can do a little bit of that from the technology angle, but being really pushed a little bit like a personal trainer to say no, we're going to try to do hard things, and we're going to try to think about what the purpose of our money and our life is. That's something that an advisor brings out in ways that people don't see coming.
You know, one of my favorite podcasts is Exponential Wisdom, which is led by Peter Diamandis. And then one of my coaches from Strategic Coach, Dan Sullivan, is also featured on that podcast. And they did a whole series on the future of financial planning and robo-advice, algorithms, et cetera. And one of the things that Dan Sullivan said, he said, this is how algorithms work. You know, they look at your history of decisions and they say, hey, this is what you want. You know, it's kind of like Amazon serving you up an ad for X, Y, and Z, right? They're making that up by what you've done in the past, but they can't tell you what you don't know you want. And that's what a financial planner can help you in this role to find out, is really discovering those things that you had no idea were out there. You have known knowns, you have unknown knowns, and then you have unknown unknowns. And that's some of the benefits of working with another human that can ask you really good questions and have a very meaningful conversation about retirement.
Yeah, having those meaningful conversations, having a good team, like Dan said, to force you to have those tough talks, right? It's open, honest conversation that often leads us to the best solutions.
And Dan Egan here, that is the managing director of behavioral finance and investing at Betterment, he shares with us here, if you're shopping for a financial advisor or a financial planner, what he believes is the most important element.
It's good team and good process. I think that like teams are very good at, as you said, sort of bringing different perspectives. I think one of the key things is you're very likely to avoid an obvious mistake when you have all of those different perspectives. Somebody will see the one gotcha or the one catch area. But the other component of it, I think, is also process. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I'm a big trust the process guy. And I think that designing good processes to kind of like go through are underappreciated. Things like, come on, like astronauts are both incredibly intelligent people. They really do not want to die in space. They're heavily motivated, and they still use checklists to go through everything they need to do during a mission. So I think that like that sort of established process that you can follow so that it's sort of, you're not having to make it up on the spot every time. You're not just relying on your memory. Good process in combination with teamwork it's fantastic.
I recently visited a financial planner who I said, "What's your process?" He said, "Well, I sit down with my yellow pad, I ask a few questions, and then, I just put the money where I think it should go." Yeah, so there's no process.
So there is no
right?
process.
There is not a process here, and there was so much overlooked because of the lack of process. And our process is called the Retire with Purpose framework. It ensures that all of your bases are covered if you know that there's a process that walks you in from defining that purpose to creating this financial life plan, liquidity, income, flexibility, estate planning, and tax planning, and then you're able to know you've covered all of your bases. Now you can move on to what's more important in life and create more meaning in your life. And that's what a good process allows you to create, and also having a great team. I think, most financial advisors are one-man shows. And here we have a whole team of certified financial planners, financial advisors that are sitting down and talking through each and every case in order to make sure they're not overlooking anything. And we all have different things that'll stand out to us and different ideas, and putting our heads together just goes back to that old, hey, two heads are better than one. And I also wanted to spotlight with you another thing that Dan had talked about during our conversation, which actually ultimately was something that was the origin story of finding Dan, was an article he wrote on sacrifice throws that was, which became an article in our weekend reading for retirees, and also a podcast that Marshall and I did, episode number 178 of the Retire with Purpose podcast. I am going to let you hear from Dan about his theory on commitment mechanisms and sacrifice throws.
And I want, you can talk about commitment mechanisms. One of the ones that I love is the idea of them making a video that says like, Dan, you don't care if the market goes down 35%. You're going to stick and hold if the market goes down 35%. And if they have somebody who's kind of, their phone a friend, like the video sits with that friend, and they have to call that friend and watch that video in front of their wife, their partner, their buddy, or whoever it is. And they have to take the hazing if they're going to go ahead anyway and break the promise that they made to themselves and possibly to other people about it. So bringing in sort of a combination of self-commitment as well as social commitment can work a little bit. I think that rather than try and say, don't do anything, one of the techniques that I tend to use is do something. We're going to do We're going to do a whole bunch of stuff right now.
This is your sacrifice throws.
Yes, absolutely. Always do different things, smaller things, like always lean into the person. It's going to be impossible to divert a river, right? Or to stop a river. You can dam it up, but it's going to get through eventually. So how can you take that emotional power and divert it into, okay, let's tax loss harvest really hard right here. We're going to focus on these securities and get those offsets out of them. There's a wide variety of kind of I don't want to call them busy tasks because they're actually really good sort of financial planning and financial assurance tasks. People need something to do, and you almost want to lean into that and say, we're going to give you a whole set of things that we're going to do to take advantage of this downturn.
If you heard from your financial advisor this past year, hey, don't do anything, just sit on your hands. How did that make you feel? Did that give you the confidence that, yeah, he's right. Yeah, well, everything's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Or do you wish something would have been done? If you're still sitting in cash, you're going, when do I get back in? Or you're concerned about the coming year with a new president in office. What's that hold for the market and tax laws? Well, we'll walk you through all those things. We'll give you some sacrifice throws. We'll show you some ways that you can take action right now to put yourself in a better position and help you sleep better at night at the same time, which is why we're offering a complimentary review right now. Meet with an independent financial advisor on our team, either in person, through a video meeting from the comfort of your home. We'll help you determine how prepared you are to handle retirement pitfalls like inflation, healthcare emergencies, stock market crashes, rising taxes. In short, we'll take the guesswork out of financial planning for you, and it can take just 30 minutes. So right now, give us a call at 866-482-9559, a comprehensive financial review we're offering with no obligation. 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. Stick around, because next up, we're busting myths.
You're listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. This is Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson.
Welcome back to Retire with Purpose, the science of retiring with confidence, the art of living with purpose. This is your host, Casey Weed. Joining me, my good friend and co-host, Marshall Johnson, to cover another one of our weekend reading for retirees articles. And if you're not sure what that is, then you haven't signed up for Weekend Reading for Retirees. You can do it at retirewithpurpose.com. Just scrolling down where it says Weekend Reading, first name and email will get you signed up to receive one email from me every single Friday with 4 articles on trending topics in the retirement planning space, the latest in tax strategies, retirement income strategies, things that you need to be aware of in order for you to make the best decisions in retirement. And sometimes we're just out there busting myths.
Mythbusters.
And this week's article that we're spotlighting came from Kiplinger's, and it is titled Mythbusters. I always love these series. This one is titled Examining the Facts About Index Annuities. And it kicks it off saying, some people hear the hype that screams that annuities are too expensive, they're too complicated, they're poor performers. However, you might be surprised, it might be a myth.
Well, the minute you mention annuities, it's going to spark
the financial A word.
The financial A word. You're going to spark emotion, right? Because you can't drive down the darn street without somebody going, hey, we sell annuities, or the other firm's going, you'll never catch us doing that garbage, and come in and find out why. It's like, it sparks a lot of emotion, and I think just like anything, we have to calm down and try to get the facts, right?
It's so ridiculous. The whole thing's just so ridiculous. That'd be like me saying, we don't sell stocks. Come find out why.
Stocks are terrible, and you should never own one.
Yeah, it's like, I hate ETFs, and you should too. There's a reason that deferred annuity sales topped $221 billion in new assets in 2019 alone, of which a record $73.2 billion were fixed indexed annuities, which is a record as well. And the basic premise here of a fixed indexed annuity is that you have downside protection with upside potential for returns. It's as simple as that. However, Google can get you in a whole lot of trouble.
Sure.
You start researching stocks, you start researching mutual funds or life insurance or fixed index annuities. You're going to see a lot of negative articles out there. You're going to see some positive articles too. You just have to watch out for the bias. As the article says here, a lot of these negative articles that are out there are written by firms that aren't even licensed to sell them. They don't even understand them. They don't have the education to understand where they fit into a comprehensive financial plan. And if you go through and look at the latest and cutting edge research, retirement income certified professional program, listen to Dr. Wade Pfau, the premier retirement income expert in the country, and look at the hard numbers, the hard research. You have to not really care about the client that's sitting across from the table if you're not going to offer them all of the potential solutions and base what you are delivering to them in the form of advice on the latest and cutting edge research. And it comes in the way of dramatic language, scare tactics, and it's all designed to obscure the real facts.
Well, and the article goes on here to say, like a prescription used in medicine, it's important for all investment vehicles to be used in the right situation for the right person. And I think that's the bottom line. The problem with trying to get educated via Google is there's a lot of firms out there that pay a lot of Google AdWords money every month to make sure that their articles are popping up, and it's creating misinformation. And so the reality here is that we have have to just bust up some of these myths from time to time.
Dad, he used to say that the problem with annuities is that historically they were only sold by insurance salespeople. You go back to the 90s, you go back to the early 2000s, it was only insurance salespeople that were selling annuities. So it was the one prescription that would work for absolutely everything. It's like, hey, you got a cold, you got the flu, your head hurts, here's a Z-Pack. It was supposed to fix absolutely everything because that's all they had to sell. That is evolving. Now you see comprehensive financial planning firms saying, hey, this is just another tool. And when we look at 3 different income strategies, one of them might have annuities, the other one won't have annuities. And you want to look at the pros and cons, the potential side effects of all of these different things and the interactions that it might have with other drugs that you might be taking or the rest of your financial life. You want to put together a plan that has all the potential solutions. You wouldn't go in and see a physician that only had 3 drugs behind the counter, right? However, if you're working with a fee-only firm, they only have a few drugs behind the counter, right? They have to put your money at risk. They don't have the ability to do these other things. So, of course, they're going to sell away from those things. I want the doctor that has all the tools.
Well, and that's the tough part is you just don't know until you start asking some of these questions. I used to work for a fee-only firm who sold against annuities. And so I drank the Kool-Aid early on in my career. I thought, annuities are bad, and believed some of these myths. And that was part of my challenge when I went back and started studying for my CFP and starting to work with you, Casey, and trying to learn, what's all the fuss about and why is this going to help my clients go through another financial crisis like I went through before.
Well, and that's myth number 1. Annuities are bad, right? Exactly what you just said there. And it's true. They can be horrible, right? Annuities can be horrible. The wrong kind of annuity for the wrong situation, that's a problem, right? If you're taking blood thinner and you don't need it, that's a problem, You probably shouldn't have a fixed annuity if you're 25 years out from retirement. You go, hey, I'm trying to get the biggest return I can because I need to make as much money as I possibly can so that someday I can actually retire. We should probably be using a low-cost index fund if that's the case.
Right.
If you're in retirement, you go, hey, I want a guaranteed income I can't outlive, and you put it all into the S&P 500 ETF, that was probably a huge mistake because you're going to see that ETF maybe lose 30% in 30 days. Where are you going to get your income from in the meantime? It might be down 53% like it was during the financial crisis and take years to get back to even. Where are you going to satisfy your retirement income from in the meantime? What if you put it all in bonds and the bonds default? You have to make sure that you're using that tool for whatever specific job you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. And so the point of it being a tool, he uses the analogy in this article. It's like you need a tool, so you go to the hardware. Well, there's lots of tools in there, and most of them you don't need for your specific job. So trying to understand which tool, why you would use it, that is the fact-based approach.
And number 2, other options can do what annuities do just as well. Well, you're not going to get a place where you get the principal protection and the upside potential of a fixed annuity or fixed indexed annuity. You're not going to find that in an ETF or a bond or a mutual fund, especially in a rising interest rate environment.
Yeah.
And there's some out there that say, hey, we can build a portfolio utilizing options and bonds and stocks, and we can get that same end result for you. But it's not possible. If it were, we would do it. If we could build our own fixed index annuity without going through an insurance company, we would do it, and we would keep the rest of the margin. Right? We'd make more money, and so would the clients if that was actually the case. But these insurance companies are the largest options traders, the largest bond traders in the world. So they're getting better rates and better prices than we can ever imagine because of that economy of scale.
Yep, absolutely. Economies of scale. The law of large numbers is going to produce much lower cost. Number 3, annuities are expensive. That leads us right into myth number 3. To be fair, there's some annuities that don't have any cost.
Yeah,
right?
There's some annuities that are really freaking expensive. I've audited variable annuities, and that's where you're going to see the majority of the high expenses and high fees are in a VA, where you've got 4% or more in annual expenses at times. And then some people cite surrender charges. However, I think the article does a good job of explaining how that isn't necessarily true either. Because if, let's say you have $300,000 you put into a fixed index annuity and it has a surrender charge of 8%. Well, the first 10% is removed at no charge. So you take out $30,000 at no penalties. If you take out $50,000, then $20,000 of that will receive an 8% penalty. So it costs you $1,600 to get $50,000. Well, this is also a good reason you shouldn't put all of your life savings into an annuity, because there are restrictions on the amount of liquidity that you have.
Well, on top of of that, talking about cost too, those same people that sell against annuities because they're commission-based insurance products, saying, "Oh, he could make a commission of 5 or 6, 7%." It's like, yeah, but then they're charging you 1% a year forever.
Yeah.
And it's increasing. Your value is going to increase. So you've got a constantly increasing fee that if you're with an advisor for 12, 15 years, that you paid them 12, 15%.
You paid them 2 or 3 times as much as that person that sold the indexed annuity.
I mean, let's be open and honest about what we're selling. And we can go both directions. I mean, I love the stock market, but I have situations where people can't handle it and they need income strategies. So understanding those two costs, this is a big one that I think is hilarious when somebody says, "Well, but they're going to make money."
Well, I want somebody to get paid. Otherwise, are they really going to do that great of a job? Myth number 4, indexed annuity returns are not attractive. Very simple. What are you comparing it to? It is a specific asset class. You wouldn't compare a bond return to a stock return, right? These are two very different things. Mm-hmm. If you're comparing it to cash, if you're comparing it to bonds, then it's much more attractive. If you're comparing it to the S&P 500, it's much less attractive. However, you're taking on risks, so you need to take all those things into consideration. Myth number 5, I can't get money out of my annuity for 10 years. Well, it's true that most annuities have about a 10-year surrender charge. Some are 15, some are 5, some are 3. They come in a lot of different flavors, but again, you're able to get 10% a year. That's more than you can typically get out of your typical CD, and then you could always take out your required minimum distributions. And now there's a lot of these products out there that have liquidity riders or additional liquidity features where you can take 10% this year, and if you don't take it this year, it goes to 20, 30, 40, 50% in the future.
Or
so they have
full liquidity
cumulative
after
liquidity.
2 years or 3 years. There's lots of liquidity.
Exactly. So again, there's a lot of different flavors. Myth number 6, annuities are just too complicated. I don't need to go into this too deeply. Have you ever read a mutual fund prospectus?
Or even seen one, for that matter. It's 274 pages. You want to tell me that's not complicated?
I have a client that's an attorney, and we sat down. We read the entire statement of understanding before we placed any of the portfolio into a fixed indexed annuity. As we did that, though, I also brought a mutual fund prospectus in at the same time. I said, here's a mutual fund prospectus. Here's a statement of understanding for the annuity. Which one's more complicated? Well, the prospectus of the mutual fund was about 10 times the size of the statement of understanding of the fixed index annuity. Mutual funds are multiples more complex than your average annuity, especially if you're talking about a fixed annuity or a fixed index annuity. Those can be very simplistic vehicles that are very easy to understand.
Yeah, and it's all about getting an education. That's the bottom line that I want people to understand. There's going to be people selling for and against annuities, and you just have to understand the facts. The reality is interest rates are on the floor right now, and if you're trying to create safe income, it's a very difficult environment where you have to be willing to at least open your ears to some of these conversations if you want a valuable opinion.
And if you're ready for that conversation, give us a call right now. Meet with an independent financial advisor on our team, either in person or through a video meeting from the comfort of your home, and we will sit down and take the guesswork out of financial planning for you. It can take just 30 minutes. 866-482-9559, 866-482-9559. We'll see you right back here next week.
You've been listening to Retire with Purpose, hosted by Casey Weed and Marshall Johnson. Investment advisory services offered through Howard Bailey Securities, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Working with Howard Bailey Securities, LLC cannot guarantee investment success or that specific financial goals will be achieved. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards, Inc. owns the certification marked CFP and Certified Financial Planner in the U.S., which it awards to individuals who successfully complete CFP Board's initial and ongoing certification requirements. Howard Bailey Financial is a registered trademark of Howard Bailey Financial. All rights reserved. Information is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice. Howard Bailey Financial nor its advisors are qualified to give tax or legal advice. You are encouraged to consult with your tax or legal professional for guidance on your individual situation. This radio show is a paid placement.